Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Torah L'Chaim with your host, myself, Rabbi Anibal. So excited to see so many of you already here. As I was saying in the chat, even before the timer was over, I saw all the names popping up. I love that. I love people who come on time to a class. It's great. It's great. So welcome, who's here? Amparo Goldman, Shelly Chochinov, Brenda and David Grossman. Welcome. Judy Sharak is here. Hello, Judy. Welcome to the class. And yeah, we are going to study today Parsha Vayera, more about the story of Abraham and Sarah. Great Parsha, very inspirational. So I'm very excited to share with you everything that I prepared for this week. Hopefully it was going to be an inspiration for you as well as it was for me when I was putting this class together. Okay, there's so much we can learn from Abraham and Sarah. They were great role models. They did lots of good things, and hopefully we will learn from them and we can do some good things in our lives. Right? That's what it's about. We usually emulate what we see around. That's the way we increase our knowledge. When we see something that we like, or when we meet somebody who is a wise person, we like to absorb the knowledge from them. So hopefully we will spend an hour close to Abraham and Sarah so we can get inspired by them. It's not a bad thing to emulate Abraham and Sarah. Yeah. And also, before we start with the class, a couple of announcements. Remember, tomorrow is November 11th, Remembrance Day, and it's going to be a special morning service at the Shari Zedek. It's going to be at 9 a.m. Every time that the office is closed, the service is at 9 a.m., not at 7:30. So if you're a minyaner, if you'd like to come to our daily services, remember, it's at 9 a.m. And it's going to be special because we are going to have a Remembrance Day moment during our service. We're going to remember the fallen heroes from the Monash Legion here in Manitoba. I'm going to read the names of all those soldiers who gave their lives so we can enjoy our freedom. So don't miss that. Also, there is going to be a beautiful poem that it was recorded by the students of Great Academy of Jewish Education here in Winnipeg. They sent me a beautiful video reading in Flanders Fields in many different languages. So every couple of lines they were switching languages, all the way from English, Russian, French, Spanish, Mandarin, and I can't remember if there is another language, even Mandarin. What about that? There's a student, Great Academy, that she is from China, so she recorded a message in Mandarin. It's going to be amazing, so don't miss that. And of course, I'm going to play the sound of the trumpet, right, with the last post and the rouse. We're going to have the minute of silence. So we are going to have a nice time honoring our soldiers. So if you're in Winnipeg, if you're in town, if you can make it in person, 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Otherwise, we are going to stream it. Hopefully you will be with us virtually. But we can all do this together. We can all honor the fallen heroes together tomorrow at 11. Okay? And on Saturday morning, this is my second and last announcement for now. Saturday morning, we also have a special service because the Shabbat morning service is going to be led mostly by past Bnei Bnot Mitzvah students. These were students that they have their Bnei Bnot Mitzvah during the pandemic lockdowns, so during the restrictions. That means that mostly they couldn't celebrate much. Some of them, they didn't even have people in the sanctuary when they did it. So now that we can come back to the sanctuaries, I would like to invite all of you, if you can make it, to come to the synagogue to wish them Mazel Tov. And again, if you cannot come, at least you can wish them Mazel Tov online. We are going to have a Kiddush at the end of the service for the first time in, I don't know, maybe first time in a kabillion years. It feels like that, at least. It feels like that. So, Shelly Chochin, if you will be in person there, great. Okay, we'll see you there. So, let's begin. Let's begin with the class today. Let's start getting inspired by Abraham and Sarah. Okay, so let's go to the very beginning of the Parsha, and this is what is amazing to me about the Torah. Right, last year I was checking every time that I prepare a class. I always check what I taught the previous year and 2 years ago, because I don't want to repeat, right? I always want to teach something fresh, something new. And it's interesting because I was expecting to teach about the opening verses of the Parsha, and I realized that last year I also taught about the opening verses of the Parsha, but a totally different message. And this is what is amazing about the Torah. You can read the same verse and find multiple different explanations about them, and something that I never stop getting amazed by that, how I can take these 3 verses and get a totally different message for you. So if you want to learn an alternative message for the opening part of this week's Parsha, all you have to do is to go to YouTube or Facebook and check last year's video for Trolechaim on Parsha Vayera. Okay, it's all there. You know that we keep all the videos on our channel. So especially YouTube is easier to find because we create playlists. So you can go there and study Vayera from my last year message. It's going to also be really nice. Okay, so let's read the opening verses of Parsha Vayera. Okay, Vayera Elav Adonai. That's the way it starts. Hello, Holly. Welcome. You said it's wind and water in Florida. Oh, wow. I guess I didn't read the news today. I hope you're okay. And yeah, Winnipeg is cold. Not so cold. But I mean, I shouldn't be complaining because we don't have snow. So cold is fine in Winnipeg. You can wear a jacket for cold. The problem is when it starts getting cold, windy, and snowy. That's the bad combination, but cold is fine. But welcome, Holly. Welcome to the class. So, back to the text. Adonai appeared. That's why it's Vayera, appeared. Okay? Adonai appeared to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre as he sat at the entrance to the tent during the heat of the day. Very interesting. Try to picture this. Especially you, Holly, from Florida. Try to imagine Florida in the middle of the summer. Try to imagine. Maybe you want to share with us how it is. Florida, middle of the summer, middle of the day, around 1 p.m., let's say 2 p.m., right? What happened outside? Who is going to who is going to be sitting at the entrance of their homes outside during the heat of the day in Florida? People usually stay inside with AC, or you go to the beach to enjoy yourself and then you go outside. Then you come inside, right? But try to picture Abraham. He was at the entrance to the tent during the heat of the day. And also, remember, this was right after the circumcision. It's very, right after the circumcision, he was sitting outside of the tent with all that heat over his head. Shelly, you said no mosquitoes. Yeah, that's true. Okay, you're talking about Winnipeg. Holly, so here is sweltering hot, maybe looking like rain. Yeah, but try to think, middle of the summer, when it's, I've been there. That's what I'm saying. I've been there. It's really hot. Okay, so verse 2. Abraham raised his eyes and saw. Okay? And there in front of him stood 3 men. And he saw them and ran from the tent door to meet them, prostrated himself on the ground and said, "My Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, please don't leave your servant." So basically, let's change the words a little bit so we understand what happened. Abraham was recovering from his circumcision. Remember, he was just circumcised. End of the last parsha. Now he's recovering. And as he was sitting at the entrance of his tent, he saw 3 people walking, passing by. Probably he noticed that, it was hot. It was in the middle of the day. These 3 poor people been walking for who knows how long. Maybe they were coming with a camel. I don't know. But nevertheless, so Abraham noticed that and said, "Oh no, poor guys, I have to do something." So he ran and begged them to come to his tent so he can take care of them. Now, which is amazing because, again, he was recovering from his circumcision. He had the perfect excuse to do nothing. Perfect excuse to do nothing. But nevertheless, he ran. And I was always wondering why the Torah uses that word, he ran. It was unnecessary. All the Torah had to say is he saw the man and he invited him over, right? And we will understand what happened. But no, the Torah is very precise in the wording here. It says, even though Abraham was in pain for the circumcision and it was very hot, nevertheless he ran to invite them over. By the way, unrelated message, but it's still something very interesting. If you read more about this parsha at home, you will see that there is the concept of doing everything quickly is repeated multiple times. I don't know why, though. He ran. He asked Sarah to quickly bake something for them. Everything is quickly, right away, and it's a common theme of this parsha. Okay, so this is what happened at the beginning, and as I said before, I need you to imagine this. You need to use your imagination for this parsha to understand what I'm trying to teach. Okay, now what Abraham did here was amazing, and it has a name. If you study Jewish values, this is what we call hospitality. Going out of our comfort zone sometimes to invite people over. Okay? This is what Abraham did. And there is the understanding that Abraham did it because he thought, or he felt, let's put it the way, he felt that it was something very important to do. And by doing that, he was honoring God. Remember, we studied last week, and if you don't believe me, just play last week's class and then you will remember. We study about God telling Abraham to take the initiative. We criticized Noah because Noah walked with God. So God said to Abraham, walk ahead of me. That means take the initiative. Don't wait until I have to go and tell you what to do. You know what you have to do. You know it already. You know what is good. You know what is bad. Follow your instincts. Okay? And that's what Abraham was doing here. He felt that inviting people over was the right thing to do, even though God never told him to do it. Okay? So it's important. It is very, very important for us to understand this concept, that sometimes we don't have to wait until God tells us specifically and explicitly what to do something. Because we all know people that they brag that they fulfilled all the commandments, but somehow they're still bad people. How is that possible? How you can actually fulfill all the letter of the law and still be bad? Because we have to understand that there is the letter of the law and there is the spirit of the law. That part, the spirit of the law, is what we have to figure it out by ourselves. That is something that counts at a feeling level, and it's very important for us. And Abraham got it right. So, for example, Deuteronomy. Let me show you this verse here. Deuteronomy 13:5 says, "It is your God alone whom you should follow." Okay? whom you should revere, whose commandments you should observe, whose orders you should heed, whom you should worship, and to whom you should hold fast. Okay? Read it again, and I'm going to explain to you what this verse seems to imply, because the Talmud specifically talks about this verse. Okay? But before that, Shelley, what is you saying here? Shelley, you say, is it another level? Instead of Abraham following Hashem, is Hashem following Abraham? No. Abraham followed Hashem. But this is the interesting thing. It's like Abraham somehow knew what God wanted from him without God having to explicitly tell Abraham what to do. Let's see if we can understand that concept. Okay? It's, in other words, you can't say, sorry, I won't do it because it's not explicitly written in the books of Halakha, of Jewish law. Somehow you have to figure it out by yourself. That's why I always recommend that it's a good idea to get familiar with Jewish ethics and to read and to study, because that kind of background information will help you along the way to make decisions. Okay? Sometimes I understand human feelings alone could be unreliable, and you have to work it at an intellectual level, but in advance. You can't wait until you have to make a decision to start making some kind of halachic research to know what to do. You have to do it in advance. Take the initiative. Holly, you say here, let me see. Running to do a mitzvah shows you are doing this with your whole body and soul. Since he is the father of our people, what an example he is setting. Yeah, Abraham was always like that. Even when God said, I know it's in a different context, right? But when God said, sacrifice your son, for example. I don't know, we can criticize Abraham going ahead and doing it, but nevertheless, it says that the next morning, early in the morning, that means that the first opportunity he had, he was ready to do it. So he was always like that. Never let an opportunity to honor God go away. He always took that opportunity at the earliest chance. And that's also important. Okay, so let's go back to Deuteronomy and this interesting verse, because the Talmud will say something very interesting. Okay, listen to this. What the Talmud says about that verse. Rabbi Hama Bar Hanina said, what is the meaning of the verse? It is your God alone whom you should follow. Okay, that's the verse that I read before. This one here. Okay, it is your God alone whom you should follow. So Rabbi Hama Bar Hanina said, what is the meaning of this verse? Well, is it possible for a person to walk and follow the Shekhinah, the divine presence? So basically, it's a fair question. It's a fair question. First question, can you actually follow God? Is something possible for us to say, hey, God is infinite. We are finite. How can God ask us to do such thing? It seems to be an impossible task. But the Talmud says, rather, this teaches us to emulate God's attributes. Just as He, God, clothes the naked, as it is written, and God made for Adam and Eve and his wife garments of skin, and He clothed them, right? Remember, when Adam and Eve realized that they were naked, first God told them, who told you that you were naked, right? But then actually God made garments for them. So basically the Talmud says, just as God clothes the naked, so must you clothe the naked. If you know somebody who is struggling to buy clothing, you help them. That's why we try as much as we can, for example, to donate clothing to charities that they actually assign clothing to people who need it. It's a mitzvah for us to do that. Let's continue. So then it says, God visits the sick, as it is written in this parsha. God appeared to him, Abraham, who was recovering from his circumcision in the plains of Mamre. That's what I just read at the beginning, right? So God visited Abraham right after the circumcision. So, as God visits the sick, so must you visit the sick. Let's continue. God comforts mourners, as it is written, and it was after the death of Abraham that God blessed Yitzchak, his son, as a comfort for the loss of his father. That's the interpretation of the rabbis. So must you comfort mourners. God buries the dead. As it is written, he buried Moses in the valley, so shall you bury the dead. In other words, the more we get to know God, the more we get in God a role model. That's what the Torah is implying here. And that's how you can tell that Abraham knew what to do without God having to explicitly tell him, because remember that Abraham was one that he was always trying to discover more about God, strengthening a relationship with God. And you know that a relationship implies getting to know the other person. And Abraham felt that he had to run to welcome these people because that's something that God will do, which is a beautiful thing to say, right? When you do something because you feel that that's what God will want you to do, right? So that's what it is. That's what it's implying. Now, let's continue with this wonderful text from Rabbi Isaiah Horowitz, also known as the Shelah HaKadosh. And this rabbi is very close to me, just because my daughter married one of the descendants of this guy. They live in Israel now. And it's the same name, Isaiah Horowitz, and it's a direct descendant from this guy, Rabbi Isaiah Horowitz, the Shelah HaKadosh, right? Look, she married somebody with yichus. Okay, it says, he said the following about this. It is clear to me that besides for its status of a lofty moral attribute, the mitzvah of hospitality constitutes fulfillment of the mitzvah to walk in his ways by emulating God, as in Deuteronomy 13:5 above, and as listed by the Rambams in Sefer HaMitzvot number 8. Okay, so Rambam said it very, very explicitly, right? There is a mitzvah, it's number 8, and what is the mitzvah number 8? Hospitality. Okay, but without saying where it's coming from. Now, Rabbi Isaiah Horowitz is saying this is coming from this part of the Torah, where we learn from Abraham that it is a mitzvah to do it. Okay? The mitzvah of hospitality. Now, let's continue. For the Holy One, blessed be He, extends hospitality to all of His creatures who are guests in every period and age, at every second and every moment of every day. If not for God's hospitality at every moment, then all of existence will cease to exist. Try to understand this. I mentioned before that Abraham learned what to do, not because God told him, but because Abraham liked to observe God's creation. Remember, I think we studied also that last week, that Abraham came to understand that there was one God just by looking around, looking at the world, looking at the sky, and asking questions. How is this possible? It has to be a creator, otherwise how could all this exist? And from there he was building his first attempt of a theology, let's put it that way. Okay, and from there it evolves all the way until what we understand of God. But he was the first one trying to create a theology about God. And one of the things that Abraham realized is, wait a minute, we are God's guests. God takes care of us at all times. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to survive. We wouldn't be able to exist. So if God is taking care of us at all times. At all times. Don't we have to do the same if we're supposed to be like God and take care of other people at all times as much as we can? Very interesting philosophy. Very interesting reasoning. That's the way Abraham realized what he's supposed to do. Let's continue. This is pure gold what Rabbi Horowitz is saying here. Now, this means that all the inhabitants of the world are like guests of God. A person is like one who has come to lodge in this world for a time. We are visitors here, and God hosts us. Therefore, by acting as a host to others, one is directly emulating God and walking in His ways. So, you know what else I love here? Because it's almost like if humanity will have known from the beginning that all we have to do is to emulate God, then everything will be so much easier. So much easier. And even when you study halakha, when you study Jewish law, you have to always ask yourself, are you honoring God with what you do? Or you're just doing it? And that's how you can be an observant Jew and fulfill all the letter of the law and still be a bad person. Because let's be honest, even Jewish law has loopholes. And there are some people that they seem to be specialists on finding loopholes to do whatever they want instead of doing what God wants. Something for all of us to think. Who's here? Philip Bialk. Philip Bialk. Welcome to the class. Welcome. Shelley Chochin, you said kavanah. What kavanah is intention, right? Intention is being aware of the moment, which you could be aware of the moment for a good thing or for a bad thing, I guess. I don't think this kavanah is what it goes for this, but it's always better when you do think, even when you're honoring God, to do it with kavanah, of course. Of course. Any other comments? I wanna hear your opinions, guys, so I can have my my soda now. Okay. So let's continue. Let's continue here. I love this. This as I mentioned at the beginning. Abraham was a role model. The more we study about him, the more we get inspired. At least it happens to me. This is an amazing thing. Okay, let's go to Pirkei Avot now. We study the we study the Torah. And I want to take you now to the Mishnah to see this beautiful Pirkei Avot that is going to bring the name of Abraham again, and it's going to expand a little bit on the rabbinic understanding of Abraham's personality. Okay, this is from Pirkei Avot chapter 5, Mishnah number 19, and it says, "Whoever possesses these three things, he is of the disciples of Abraham, our father. And whoever possesses three other things, he is of the disciples of Balaam, the wicked." Remember who Balaam was? Remember? He was a wizard who tried to curse the Jewish people. Of course, God stopped him. And instead of cursing the Jewish people, he ended up blessing the Jewish people. But the fact that he blessed the Jewish people, it doesn't mean that he was a good person. Because at the end of the day, he tried to curse us. And because he couldn't curse us, tradition says that he gave King Balak advice on how to defeat the Jewish people. Okay, just for you to. So he couldn't curse us, but gave bad advice to another guy, so the other guy would be able to defeat us. So anyway, let's continue. So what are the three things that we can learn from Abraham? And it says here, a good eye, a humble spirit, a moderate appetite. Okay, you have those three things, you are one of the disciples of Abraham, our father. Now, if you have an evil eye, a haughty spirit, and a limitless appetite, you are one of the disciples of Balaam, the wicked. Now, what is the problem of this? Let's continue. What is the difference between the disciples of Abraham, our father, and the disciples of Balaam, the wicked? The disciples of Abraham, our father, enjoy this world and inherit the world to come. As it is said, I will endow those who love me with substance. I will fill their treasuries. This is from the book of Proverbs. But the disciples of Balaam, the wicked, inherit Gehinnom. You know what Gehinnom is? We usually translate it as hell. Yeah, I said it. And descend into the nethermost pit. So it said, for you, O God, will bring them down to the nethermost pit, those murderers and treacherous men. They shall not live out half their days, but I trust in you. Now, it's very interesting that it doesn't say anything about what happened with the disciples of Balaam in this world. And you notice that for the disciples of Abraham, it says it clearly. They enjoy this world and enjoy the next one. For the disciples of Balaam, says they won't enjoy the next world, but it doesn't say anything about this world. And my understanding of this is because these people, they think that they are enjoying in this world. And doesn't matter if you tell them, no, you are not. You're being miserable for what you do. They won't hear you until it's too late. Right? So I will say that's why it's the Mishnah doesn't even talk about that. But it's telling that, this is what is going to happen to you if you continue down that way. So, but let's go to what we learn for Abraham. A good eye. Good eye is somebody who sees the good in everybody. And that's why he was able to develop the value of hospitality. Because sometimes the reason why we fail at hospitality is because we judge too much and about other people. And that was not Abraham. Remember that he even tried to save the people from Sodom and Gomorrah. When God said, I'm going to destroy them. And Abraham said, no, please don't do it. What if there are 50 righteous people there, right? Always trying to see the positive on everything. That was Abraham. And then it says, a humble spirit, that is very important. We are going to see that again with Moses. Moses is going to take the concept of being humble to the next level. We have to wait for that until we start reading about the life of Moses. So not too many spoilers today. And then the next thing is a moderate appetite. Why would you say a moderate appetite and not appetite at all? Because moderate appetite, it means that you still have urges, but you know how to control them. Judaism is not about eliminating the urges that you have in life. Urges, I mean money, power, sex, honor, all that. That you have those feelings, that you want to pursue that. Judaism doesn't say that you have to eliminate them. What it says is you have to control them so they don't control you. And that translates into what the Mishnah calls a moderate appetite. It means appetite controlled by you and not the other way around. Well, Balaam, at the end of the day, is somebody whose appetite for all of the above that I mentioned controlled him. So he was out of control in this life. Okay? So Abraham was somehow able to find that middle point. And that's why we are all Bnei Abraham. We are all the descendants of Abraham. Shelley Chochinov, you said, a warning about excess. Yeah, correct. A warning about excess. That is, Judaism is not about eliminating anything. It's about not falling into the trap of living a life of excess on everything. We are always trying to find the middle point. Maimonides wrote a lot about that. about, I think he called it the Shvila Za'av, that middle point that we all have to find in life. He wrote a lot about that. So if you want to learn more about that, Google Maimonides about finding the middle point, okay? So let's go back to Deuteronomy, because now it's telling us something very important that is going to fill up the gaps in I was reading about Abraham and the verse that I presented you from Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 6:18, it says, "Do what is right and good in the sight of God, that it may go well with you and that you may be able to possess the good land that your God promised on oath to your fathers." I don't know if you can see it, but why this verse to me seems unnecessary if God already revealed the Torah. Why will God have to say, do what is right and good in the sight of God? Didn't God just reveal the Torah? Isn't following the Torah doing what is right and good? And God already said, follow the Torah. So why is this verse necessary? Listen to this. The Rambam said, the intention behind the mitzvah to do what is fair and good, and that's the verse that I just read, is the following. The previous verse states, you must keep his decrees and testimonies that he commanded you. Now this verse is saying, even regarding matters in which I have not explicitly commanded you, make sure you do what is good and right in God's eyes, because he loves that which is good and right. I don't know if you can see this. Basically what it says is, when you read the Torah, when you read Halakha, when you read Jewish law, not everything is regulated there. We are going to have lots of situations in life that is not going to be explicitly covered by, let's say, the Shulchan Aruch or the Talmud. Not explicitly covered. And you still supposed to do something that is good. Okay? This is a beautiful mitzvah. This mitzvah comes to fill up the gap. This is the mitzvah that inspired Abraham. Abraham wasn't waiting until God will tell him exactly to the point, to the dot, what to do. Abraham was able to do what is good and right, at least what he felt that it was good and right. Can you make a mistake? Of course you can make a mistake. Of course. But even God understands that. That's what he said. But no, sometimes make a mistake, you apologize, and you try better next time. But we try to do always what is good and right, even if it's not explicitly covered by Halakha, by Jewish law. I hope that's clear, because that is extremely, extremely important. Let's keep reading Rambam. Okay? This is an important principle. It will be impossible for the Torah to specify the proper interpersonal conduct for every life situation regarding neighbors, friends, businesses, communities, and countries. The Torah does, however, specify the proper conduct for many situations, even if not for all situations. For example, you shall not be a gossip monger. The Torah does say that explicitly, right? You shall not take revenge or bear a grudge. The Torah does say that explicitly. Our verse now states a general principle to do what is good and right in all life situations. But that, as I mentioned before, that's why it's so important for us to get familiar with Torah and Torah ethics as much as possible. Because whenever we find a situation of something that is not explicitly covered by Torah, we can always learn by analogy what to do. And that is the way that can mostly guarantee that our reaction is going to be a Jewish one. And we can develop what we call sometimes Jewish ethics. Abraham got it by observation and by analogy, by learning from other similar situations. He learned what to do. Okay. Now let's go back to hospitality, because I wanted to show you specifically how important this mitzvah is among other commandments. Okay, let's bring this text from the Chofetz Chaim, that it goes like this: how treasured by God is the mitzvah of hospitality. The Torah devotes much attention and great details to the episode of Abraham's hospitality, the ones that I just read at the beginning, right? This is to serve for us as a reminder, an inspiration to follow in God's footsteps, and actually in Abraham's footsteps our entire lives. Indeed, immediately after recording this episode, the Torah goes on to praise Abraham specifically because he educated his children, including future generations, to follow in his ways of righteousness and hospitality. This refers to the verse, "For I have loved him," because he commands his children and his household after him that they keep the way of God. Now, let me tell you something. I'm going to talk more about this Saturday for my sermon, right? But because you came to the class, you're going to have a little preview of this Saturday sermon. One of the things that we learn from Abraham is how he involved his family on everything he did. And this is even more interesting when we learn about, for example, the behavior of Lot, his nephew. The Torah will say that both Abraham and Lot were good people. I know Lot went to live to Sodom, right? Sodom was a city famous for not having good people, but nevertheless, he was a good people living in Sodom. Remember when the three angels came to visit Abraham here at the beginning of the parsha? And this is when God is telling Abraham that he's going to destroy Sodom. Abraham sees these three angels and he invites them over, all right? Then the angels go to Sodom. When Lot sees the angels, he also invites them over, just like Abraham. But there's a huge difference. When Abraham invites the angels, Abraham says to his servant, do this, to his wife, do that, to his child, do these other things, all to attend the guest. And the rabbis read from there that Abraham is involving his entire household in the observance of the mitzvah. It's not something just for him. He shared the responsibility in order to teach them that that's what they have to do. It's not something that he taught them in a classroom. He taught them as a role model by doing it and engaging them. Okay? When Lot receives the angels, he is alone. Where are his children? Where is his wife? Nowhere. Unfortunately, Lot was not able to pass all that to his family. So he did what was right. He inviting him over. He protected them from the. Remember that the city of Sodom, the inhabitants were trying to kill the angels or to rape them, and Lot protected them. But he was alone. He was alone. That is a huge difference. Huge difference. And that's something that we also have to understand. Hospitality is great because it usually involves our entire family. I don't know if you ever invited people over. You will know that everybody at the house will have to do something. Otherwise, it's impossible. You can't rely on one single person to do everything when you have guests. And that's why it's so important. Let's continue with the Chofetz Chaim. Okay? So it said, this is what it said. Now, we see that the Torah devotes much space to depicting every detail of Abraham's hospitality. We are taught that Abraham Avinu kept all the laws of the Torah, even though the Torah wasn't revealed yet. Yet, it is specifically with regard to his fulfillment to the mitzvah of hospitality that the Torah goes into such minute detail. And it relates the other mitzvot that he kept in general terms only. Just a beautiful thing. Now, again, as I mentioned before, how how did again? This is midrash, right? Don't take it literally, but the midrash is trying to say that Abraham was able to figure out the entire Torah without receiving the Torah, just by paying attention to God. Just by paying attention to God, by emulating God. And I guess because future generations failed to do that, the revelation of the Torah as a book was necessary. Abraham was able to do it just by doing what is right, by following his gut feelings and doing what is right. I guess at one level, we all have that inside ourselves. We can all do that if we want. If we want. Okay? Now, back to the Talmud. The Talmud will talk, I mean, there are lots of teachings in the Talmud about hospitality. And the Talmud in Masechet Shabbat, it will say, Rabbi Yochanan said, welcoming guests is as great as raising early to attend the Beit HaMidrash, I mean the study hall. Now this needs a little bit of an explanation. Why the Talmud, or specifically Rabbi Yochanan, puts these two together. They seems to be unrelated, right? How did he connect welcoming guests with going to the yeshiva, right, and study Torah? And by the way, Beit HaMidrash, even though we translate it as study hall, it also implies synagogue. The concept of synagogue as a building that is exclusively for prayer is relatively new. Back in the day, Beit HaMidrash, even though it translates as house of study, Beit HaMidrash was a house of prayer as well. So it's a place that people go to study. Hey, it's time for mincha. They will stop studying, they will pray, and they will continue study. But that was a place of prayer as well. So when we read Beit HaMidrash, you also have to understand synagogue. So you can read this: welcoming guests is as great as raising early to go to shul. Okay. BQ Zichri, welcome to the class from the UK. Welcome. So let's continue, and let me explain why Rabbi Yochanan put these two together. In fact, it won't be me explaining you this concept. Is going to be none other than the Maharal of Prague. He said, when one extends hospitality to guests, he is welcoming human beings who are created in God's image. This is, in essence, a godly activity. Just as one who arises early to attain Beit HaMidrash in order to study Torah is engaged in a godly pursuit. So this is the thing. This is the thing. Before I continue reading, think of it this way. I will say everybody agrees that going to pray to synagogue is a spiritual exercise. Do we all agree that that's why we pray? Because it's a spiritual exercise? But it's not so obvious to say. Not so obvious to say that welcoming guests is a spiritual exercise. And with the Talmud, and Rabbi Yochanan was trying to say, by saying welcoming guests is as great as going to shul, that means that they are both spiritual things. Okay? Let's continue with the Maharal. We see in the teaching of the sages where the Torah and the godly nature of human beings are equated. Okay? Beloved is man, for he is created in the divine image. Beloved are the children of Israel, for they have been given the precious tool, means the Torah. Okay? So it's a very interesting thing. Shelly Chochinov, you say, let me see what you say here. You said, we're also talking to Hashem, although we could use our own words. Yeah. But basically, what it's saying here is welcoming guests is as important as prayer. Okay, let's put it that way. You're right. Maybe we should simplify the statement from the Talmud. welcoming guests is as important as prayer. Why? Because they're both spiritual in nature. But sometimes we don't see that. We don't see that in hospitality, but it is. Now, let's bring back the Hafetz Chaim. He will say, in the description of Abraham's hospitality to strangers, the Torah relates how, although Abraham was still in pain from his circumcision and the day was hot, he nevertheless sat at the entrance of his tent, hoping that he might spot some passerby whom he could invite into his home. Very interesting. These are basically, of course, the words of Midrash. What was he doing outside? It was hot. Well, he was there to see if there was somebody else who may need his hospitality. So this is talking about, it's not just about inviting, but it's also about being proactive. When he did indeed see some travelers, he ran to them, prostrated himself before them, and pleaded with them to accept his offer of hospitality. Although this awesome level of conduct is beyond our reach, we should still learn from here to search for guests and to accept them into your homes with great affection, much as we would act towards a wealthy man from whom we hope to gain a large sum of money. Basically, what Hafetz Chaim is, who do people usually invite either home or out for lunch? Well, maybe somebody who likes something from them. That's why you invite them, right? To eat. But here we said, no, that shouldn't be our motivation. And the other thing is, usually the excuse for not inviting is that it's uncomfortable. Puts a burden on our household to do it. And I think what the point that the rabbis are trying to make here is the Torah is describing every single possible pain that Abraham was suffered at that moment. He was just recently circumcised, but he was suffering the heat. When he prostrated, he probably had pain. He just had a circumcision, right? I hope you can imagine that. It's painful. Why would the Torah describe that for us to imagine that? To understand that he was uncomfortable and he overcame the discomfort to invite people over, which is usually the deterrent for us to invite people over, because literally we call it a pain in the neck, right? For everything that involves, from setting up to cleaning up. So there you go. This is the inspiration that we learn from Abraham. Now, and there is one more text that I wanted to share with you. And this is from the Talmud, Masechet Hagigah, page 27a. It says, it is written, the altar was of wood, 3 cubits tall, and its length was 2 cubits, including its corner. The surface and its size were of wood. The angel said to me, this is the table that is before God. This is from the book of Ezekiel. Nothing wrong. Nice verse from the book of Ezekiel. But this verse seems puzzling, says the Talmud. It begins by referring to the altar and ends off by referring to the same object as a table. Read it again, right? Rabbi Yochanan as well as Reish Lakish explain. When the temple in Jerusalem stood, the altar atoned for one's transgressions by way of the offerings burned there. Now, when there is no Beit HaMikdash, when there is no temple, the table upon which one eats atones from one's transgressions. And Rashi explains, his table atones for him through hospitality to guests. So basically the rabbis are adding one more layer to the mitzvah of hospitality, and they said spiritually it has the power to atone for our sins, the same way that Yom Kippur atones for our sins. So we have an opportunity to atone for our sins every time we invite people over to eat, which is, I think, an amazing concept. Okay, so this is what I have for you to teach you today. I hope you learned something from Abraham and Sarah, of course, because as we read before, they did it together. when they invited people over, they were both doing everything to serve these three angels. So it was a family thing. Yeah. So I want to thank you all for connecting this afternoon, for studying with me this Barsha. And hopefully we are going to be together next Thursday at the same time. And if you missed any part of this class, don't worry. This class is going to be rebroadcasted tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time. And remember, tomorrow, Friday at 9 a.m. at Temple Shalom and online, Remembrance Day Shachrit service at the Shari Zedek. Okay? Kabbalat Shabbat, 5:30. As regular, Temple Shalom, I will be leading that one. And Saturday morning, special service with the past Bnei Bnot Mitzvah that they had their celebrations during the restrictions, during the lockdowns, some of them, and they are coming back. So if you can make it, come to the synagogue to wish them Mazel Tov, because it's something that they couldn't have. They couldn't have the entire congregation wishing them Mazel Tov because we have all these restrictions on how many people could come. So now you have the opportunity, if you can, to come and say and wish them Mazel Tov in person. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much. Stay safe. Enjoy the rest of your day. And hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone.